I want Judith to tell you her full story as our keynote speaker, but what has so impressed me about her is that she asked God during the Holocaust not to make her bitter, but better. She asked God not to allow her to come out of the Holocaust experiences bitter towards the many evil people that mistreated her, but to become a light of change, a change of the human heart, to forgive and make a difference. And that Judith Meisel has done. She has spoken all over the world to groups, universities, and high schools, and junior high schools about the Holocaust. She has spoken to tens and tens of thousands of people about her experiences, and she brings a message of hope. She has marched with Dr. Martin Luther King, had dinner with him quite personally. She knew him as a friend. She stepped in and blessed and protected a black family in Philadelphia in 1963 when racist mobs were ready to destroy their home and kill them. She has received many awards and honors for her work over the many years since World War II, and she's a subject of a motion picture documentary entitled Survival of a Human Spirit that tells her amazing life story, and I have watched that. I wept in my radio studio as I interviewed her and heard her story. I really have come to love this woman and what she stands for, and I know you will feel the same way when you hear her. Please join me in welcoming our keynote speaker in our March of Remembrance, Judith Meisel.
I will remember this day for a long, long time because you are very, very special to me. How is it I country that I would be here like this in this magnificent place and be here and you're so attentive even though it was going to rain today, and I had a discussion with the above today. And when I saw outside that the rain was coming down, I said, thank God I'm alive. That's what I say every day when I say the Shema, when I wake up. Michael, I can't give you the last name, but I want to tell you something. I feel for you because I have spoken to many times of young German students who come in various schools who stay for like 6 months and so forth. And I have to tell you what a legacy the religion, Nazism, left you. In the most educated country in the world, there was no country in the world that were more educated than Germany. And they gave the world so much. And they one man who couldn't even apply and find and do an application to a university, and they elect him, Sickelberger, Hitler. He was nothing, but he had one thing that I think. He had charisma, and that's what the Germans needed, charisma, and he really masterminded this whole thing with religion, with his third. He wanted to create 1,000-year life, and he almost could do that. And that is something that is really absolutely impossible. And that's what it gave them the power, because we could not believe that Germany would do that. We thought maybe Russia could do that or something, but not. I was 10 years old when I lived through Stalin. He was not very good communist when I'm born in Lithuania. I was 10 years old. My father died then, 2 years before the Russians came in. And I want to tell you, if they wouldn't, if my father would not have passed away, my mother would have stayed in that little town in Lithuania, in Jasvina. And she would never have moved to a big city to Kaunas. And with her moving, when we moved, I'll never forget my first experience. I had no idea what was happening. A child of, at that time, 11 years old, what did I know? Why was this happening? And we moved into an apartment, and I got friends with some wonderful neighbors. But then when they took us out from there to take us in the ghetto, and take us in the ghetto there, and those kids were throwing stones on us and called it Zichtbank, which means Jewish pariah. And the people there, the parents, stood and egged them on. Hitler could possibly never have done it on his own if he didn't have anti-Semitism, the complicity, and what to give them the help and to provide that hatred. He could never have done it by himself. Well, the Kovna ghetto started, and that you can hear. How many of you have been to the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum? Oh, I'm very connected with them in Washington. And they have there, in my ghetto, they invited, they have this, there were 292 Jews in Lithuania, all over Lithuania. And what happened is only 6% survived. And they invited the 6% to United States Holocaust Memorial Museum, and we found out many different things, but they found it out for us. And it was incredible when we all got together there. And there it shows that where the ghetto started, where they took, was a Jewish neighborhood. And in there were 4,000 Jews, and I lost an aunt with 5 children. They cut their throat and they killed them that way before the Germans even came in. And when the Germans came in, they stopped it. Now, why did they stop it? Because they saw that they had slave labor, and that's what we were taken into the ghetto, to become slaves. I was at that time already, by then, 13 years old, and I worked in a shoe factory, making sneakers for the German army. The ghetto was terrible. We lived with 4 families in one tiny home, with about 11 children in there. No indoor. We had to go out to get water outside. There was no electricity. There was rats running around and no food. And we lived like this. We went in 1941, and then in 1945 they took us to concentration camp. One day as we stood there, they told all of them to assemble on a big place, and then they started to take the people who they wanted. Where we were going, we didn't know. We didn't know where we were going. We got in trucks. They took us to a place where they were waiting for us, what they called cattle cars. They were taken us to Stutthof concentration camp. I'm going to rush very fast because it's very late, and so you'll have to be with me. And so I'm letting a lot of things off because I don't know how long I have.
Good.
No, I don't want to. But in any case, we got on the train, which was called cattle cars. It was nothing. It was so smelly. There were 2 buckets they put in, no water, and people were standing packed like sardines. And we drove for two days. And then occasionally we would open up a window and they would throw in some food. The people, the bystanders who were standing and watching how the trains were going. And people would start getting this boost and then they would fall and people would, it was just terrible. You know, in situations like this, you see the best of people and the worst of people. And then and my brother was taken away from us, and the men were sent to Dachau, and we were to Stuttgart. I can't tell you, when I got off the train, half of the people were dead. They just pulled them off and threw them out through the windows, and that they were throwing people out, half dead. And then they came, very, very handsome men with shining boots and blue uniforms. Those were Hitler's guards. You know, in Stutthof, the concentration camp, I went to Auschwitz about 6 years ago, and the curator, now all the museums, they're all museums now, wherever you go in Europe, in Eastern Europe or the other. Well, most of the concentration camps were not in Germany as they were in all the other places, and it's there where he had his helpers. And so that's what it is. It's such a difficult thing to just so different what had happened to us. And when we were taken off, we were immediately told to undress, and they gave us a striped dress with a number and said Judith on it. And then we had to go through an ally, and then in front there on a table, I had to stop there, and on one side was a woman, and on the other side was a man standing there, and he said to her, "Oh, she has such beautiful," in German, "such beautiful hair," and they tore my hair out, tore literally out my hair. And at that time, I was 13 years old. And then my mother, she had gold teeth, simple, yanked it out, and she was full of blood. And my sister was beaten up. And then they told us where to go, and we went into the barrack. And that's how I entered Stutthof concentration camp. While we were working as slaves in the ghetto, Stutthof also had their own everything in the concentration camp. The Third Reich, Hitler's, they did not have to pay a penny. It's all the goods that they took away from us. And what goods? We had good goods. With that, they paid everything. It didn't cost them. If you wore a sweater, they took off the wall. They had people sitting there and unraveled it. Those years ago was all pure wool and gold and everything, but they took away from us. And with that, they gave us a little metal dish, and it got, at the end, it was so rusty. And in there, they put in some water and in some peels from potatoes and onion and all kinds of things, and that was we had. And one day, only one day, during that day, they were opening up the water faucet. And to me, to this day, water is so I don't like to just throw water out. I mean, it is such an important thing. I always used to say it was the most important thing for me was to drink, to have something to drink. And then we stayed there. We came in there in June, and we left in the end between Christmas and New Year. They took us away from there. My mother died 2 weeks before they would take us out to take us to the Umschlagplatz. Now the Umschlagplatz means the killing field where they kill the people, the Umschlagplatz. And that's what the big marches were. They were taking the people out of the concentration camps. And whoever couldn't walk could stay. But they killed them. And in any ways, with Stutthof liberated, was not liberated till May, because Stalin, the Russians liberated, us, operated in charge, and and Stalin said, I don't want you to let out Stutthof and Auschwitz and that, the ones that we liberated, because we don't want to have a bunch of dead people and to deal with them at the end. And they would have saved some people, but they didn't. So in any ways, I want to go back fast because there's more to me and that, because you've heard enough of gruesomeness and so forth. But let me tell you, my mother was 42 years old, beautiful woman, religious woman. When she had to, every other day they would ask you to get undressed naked, and they would stand there and look and spit at you and throw everything on you and make you really feel terrible about yourself in the camps. And then one day we had to get undressed. My mother was holding on to me. We were standing together, and they took us and they took her to the gas chamber. And I saw my mother going in the gas chamber, holding onto my hand, and she said, "Run, Judith," and she pushed me out, and I ran out, and I ran out naked. And I'm lucky that the guard didn't see me, that I was naked, that I was running out. And then the people who were taking off our clothing there, put on and not somebody else's dress, and said, "Run to your barack," and which I ran there, and I was hiding for about 5 days. 2 weeks later, I was standing in a peel, and we were not allowed to talk to each other. And we kept playing, "Please, God, send airplanes with bombs, kill us here. We can't do it anymore, do this." And we never saw any airplanes. But then towards the end, we could hear that there were bombs falling someplace. So I was standing there, and wrapped in a piece of burlap, a stone came through. And in there was a little written in Yiddish that the war is going to be over soon. Please, women, hold on. And the commandant saw me, and he came out with his big, he had something, and he had on his boots, he had riding boots, and he kicked me with that, and he took out and he hit me. And my foot to this day I'm suffering with that boot. He took his cigar and burned a hole into my leg. Oh. And he said to me, "Give me what you've just picked up." I said, "There was something that I was hungry, a piece of candy," and I swallowed it. I swallowed a piece of, not the burlap, but the little note that was in there.
Yeah, there you go.
And then 2 weeks later, we were taken to the Umschlagplatz, and in a heavy bombardment, everybody started to run, and we fell into a ditch, and we crossed there, and the woman, we knocked on the door, and the woman came out, and she almost like she knew we were there, and took our dress that was full of flies and threw it out and gave us clothes, and said to the Russian soldier who said, you, the Russian soldier, you take them to the Umschlagplatz. And he said, no, I'm not going to take you. He told her he's going to take us, but we're not going to take her. I'm going to take her to the Weichsel, to the Vistula River, and you can cross on the other side. It was near Danzig. And then when you cross over, go to a convent, and they will help you. The nuns are very nice. So that's what we did. We called all that. And this was between Christmas and New Year's. How did I know? We didn't usually know what was happening, the dates or something when you're lost, when you don't have, we were not allowed to have any kind of communication. And we went there, and I tell you, they knew that we were not, and he's told us, don't tell them that you're Jewish. We crossed that course, but he said also, do it at night. And we called on all our fours, and we went across the other side. And we went after that, we went from place to place, and we find the convent. Well, the nuns were wonderful, and they gave us the rosaries, and I tell you, they wanted to convert us, and they knew we were Jewish. I mean, they knew, like, we didn't have to tell them anything. And then, to us, was the most important thing. The most important thing is that we are Jewish, and not to give up to be Jewish. To me, is the most important thing is that I survived as a Jew. That to me is the most important thing. And then, from then on, we went to look for a place, and we didn't want to stay with the nuns. And then I had typhus, so my sister dropped me off we found another Russian soldier. There were a lot of Russian soldiers there, and we spoke a little bit of Russian, and he took me to the hospital, and then she came and picked me up, and we went into a Wehrmacht station, which we didn't know. This was where all the Wehrmacht, the Gestapo, everybody came there. It was right near Danzig. And from there, she was such a horrible person, but we had to, she said, one day she said, we have to go, we're going to Denmark. I had no idea where Denmark was. We didn't even know anything, and we went to Denmark. Well, while we were there, going there, our boat was torpedoed, and to this day I don't swim. And I managed to hold on a plank, and we were taken by a small boat and taken to Denmark, to a little town. Is there anybody Danish or Swedish? Oh, yeah. And Swiningen, and took us there, and then took us to Copenhagen. And now there were two words. When I was taken, I was liberated on May 5th, 1945 by the British in Denmark. And I want to tell it doesn't give me time to go on more, because I want to speak a little bit of how I got involved here with civil rights movement if people want to know. And anyways, I survived. I owe my life to the Danish people. I weighed 47 pounds. I was 16 years old. And I tell you, when we told the Red Cross worker we're Jewish, she wouldn't believe us. We signed our name in Hebrew. And from then on, many of our problems were over. I was in the Soloway Sanatorium outside of Copenhagen. I was there for 2 years, and they nursed me back again. I couldn't eat for a whole year. They were feeding me through my navel, because there was no even that they could give me intravenous then. And this was in 1945, May 5th, 1945. And my life there was just incredible. But then we found my brother. We found my brother, and everybody wants to know, how did you find your brother? My brother. We made a woman came to Copenhagen, and then she told us that her husband survived, and he's now in Palestine, which at that time was Palestine, in Israel. And so we made a poster, and we sent it. He was in a displaced persons camp in Italy, in Italy, and we sent it to him, and it took him like 6 months to find it, and that was up, you know, they glued it on for him and on the wall, and then he found it, and he sent us to come right to Israel, but we didn't. We stayed in Denmark, and then he came to Canada, and I came to Canada. Now you know a little bit about me. When I was in Denmark, my sister tells me, all I wanted to know was, is there a synagogue? All I wanted to know is there a Torah? We thought we were the only 2 Jews alive. And that was my big thing. And she tells me, and I remember going around, and I was also in a displaced person camp, and there were a lot of Germans too there. And a woman walks around and says, Shalom Aleichem. That means peace be with you. And I say, Aleichem Shalom. Can you all say Aleichem Shalom?
Aleichem Shalom.
Aleichem Shalom means may you also go in peace and do all that. And she said, my mother sent me, was a young girl, to find and see if there are any Jews. And then took me home. And then I was practically adopted by a Danish couple who didn't have children. Me and my sister, we were too old to be adopted. And my life was beginning to live. I was there. And what the Danes gave me most important is my self-esteem, and that I'm human, and gave me this feeling of belonging to humanity. And to me, that was the greatest thing. I wanted to come to my father very bad. So what did I do? We decided, my sister married by then, and she had a child, and I decided to leave her in Denmark, and I will go to visit my brother. And I came to Canada. He came to Canada. He survived Dachau. He was liberated by the American army. Also on the march to the Umschlagplatz. I passed away last year. And then I was there, and I met my husband aboard ship, and we got married. And when I arrived in Philadelphia, I saw certain things that I feel is very scary for me. When an African American family moves into a neighborhood called Falkhoff, near how many of you know is from Philadelphia maybe? And if you're there, it's right near the airport. And it's not an exciting place, but this was the first African American moving in there. And a whole mob of people turned out and wrote, using the N-word, go back home, and it was just terrible. And I sat there and I watched with my kids, and I decided, no, I'm going to bake some cookies, and I'm going to go over to the bakers. I did not know them. And I became very close with Sarah Baker, and we worked very hard on the March on Washington together. And I became very involved in the civil rights movement, because I thought, if African Americans' homes are not safe, my Jewish home is not safe. No one's is. what I'm telling you, you are becoming the witness. You are becoming an Ellen Wiesel, who is an incredible writer, and he's so incredible. He says anyone that talks to the Holocaust, tell the people that are listening that you are, from now on, you are the witness. Because there are people who are saying today that the Holocaust didn't happen. There is also some who are professors at universities, certain universities. And I don't want to start naming, I know we used universities. Those people too have to know. And I have talked to a group of deniers, and I've told them, you are going to kill me a second time, and I am not going to allow you. And you, from now on, are not going to allow anybody to do that. A man by the name of Reinhold Neumüller. He was an Episcopalian minister in Germany. He was arrested 10 times. And each time he gave a sermon, they let him out, he gave a sermon, they took him back in. And Reinhold Neumüller wrote this poem. First, when Nazi Germany arrived to my country, Germany, they arrested all the communists. I was not a communist, so I didn't object. Then when they arrested all the trade unionists, I was not a trade unionist, so I didn't object. But then when they came after the Jews, I was certainly not a Jew, so I didn't object. And when they came after some Catholics, I was not a Catholic, so I didn't object. But then when they came after me, there was no one else to accept but me. So I want to thank you again for allowing me to come into your lives.
So God laid this poem supernaturally on my heart. I've read it to several of my Jewish friends. One has already asked me to copyright it. Another one, who's a businessman, a very successful man in the Twin Cities, has asked me for permission to give it to every rabbi in the Twin Cities to be read on High Holy Day. God gave this to me, and the title of the poem I wrote, and Judith, I really dedicate this to you. I ponder what might have been. I ponder what might have been. Please join me and think of them. Mothers and fathers, their children too, relatives many, all were Jews. I ponder their dreams, their love for each other, generations killed, grandfathers and mothers. 6 million of them, their souls cry out, remember us, never again, their voices shout. Never again can you remain silent as ones are led to slaughter, for they are your family, your sons and your daughters. They are humanity which we all share. Do not be silent, for you must care. Care for the babies that died those days in evil, horrible, twisted ways. The children holding their little hands as they are buried and heaped upon the land. The fear, the terror they all did feel, asking, why me? Why me? Can this be real? These precious souls who were not few, killed and murdered because they were Jews. I weep as I write this, my heart is broken. I hear their cries, and more than a token I must give my all, that never again, that will be my cry, for we know not when evil again stalks our land, evil intentions to kill. Will you stand? Will you stand and be brave and not fear? For the voices are calling and we must hear. Voices of the past we must hear today. Voices that call us to pray and act, they say. Pray and act, for now is when we must all say, never again.
WWIi.